Betra að vera kláka klár og krafsa snjó að hæði en lifa mildur öll sín ár undir hnakk og reiði. Sometimes it's better to choose the uncomfortable and to choose freedom over comfort. And that's maybe what we have done here. Our farm is actually very far away from airports and cities. So it's a 3-hour drive to the nearest city in either direction. And if you want to take the airplane, you have to drive for 4 or 5 hours. So the farm is from 1861. And like these timber walls have been standing since then because obviously people knew how to build houses in the old days. We live on a farm with sheep and horses. And we also have a couple of herding dogs and some chickens. And when we live together as a family on a farm, up in the mountains, with very long and cold winter, it is of course very important that everyone in the family are participating and taking part in running the farm. So I am totally blessed to have a husband who is obsessed with sheep. So we are 5 people here, never bored. You could say that because there's always something to do on the farm. And we have about 200 winter-fed sheep. And they are of the breed All Norwegian sheep, which is the same breed the Vikings kept as livestock 1,000 years ago. And our horses are imported from Iceland because we used to live in Iceland for many years. And when we moved to Norway, we brought the horses with us. And once horses leave Iceland, they can never return back home. Because Iceland is an island and they want to keep their country and their island free of horse diseases. So all of the horses are more or less descendants of our best breeding mare that we brought with us from Iceland to Norway. It's also the same breed the Vikings kept 1,000 years ago. What's really fascinating about the Viking age is that both men and women could be what's called kind of chieftains. And one of the main findings in Norway from the Viking era, the Oseberg ship, is actually the burial place of two women who were very, very wealthy. And they have also found Viking warrior graves, which has turned out to be women warriors and not only men. The horses were very, very valuable to the Vikings. I try to preserve the Viking knowledge and the ancient knowledge about horses, which of course is an interpretation of how I experienced the art and the sagas from the time. Because in the modern day, I think horse riding has more or less become synonymous with controlling the horses and making them do stuff. Which is opposite, I think, to how the Vikings were riding and using their horses, and also which is quite opposite to how the working cowboys are riding and using their horses again. So I then started training my horses through a completely different principle. And I actually also found some stories on how the Vikings were training their horses 1,000 years ago. This is a very, very small part of the Bayeux tapestry, which is an embroidered tapestry from the events taking place at 1100, the battle at Hastings. And if we study the tapestry, we see there's a whole lot of horses, of course, embroidered in tapestry, but all the riders are riding their horses with loose reins. And also from the Viking saga of Cormac saga, we get some insight in how the Vikings were riding their horses. Because Cormac is somehow giving Njarvi riding lessons, which ends with Cormac flinging Njarvi off his horse's back. And Cormac then says to Njarvi, "This is what you get for holding as tight to your shield as to your reins. And if you continue doing this, you will feel my club upon your ear." So it's very evidential that the Vikings were also not riding with their reins for controlling the horse. It was not thought good riding to be holding as tight to the reins as to the shield. So the reins are supposed to be slack, and the shield is supposed to be tight. So maybe that's also kind of a Viking way of being, that, you know, they explored new parts of the world with their ships, and often they settled and lived peacefully in different countries and mixed with other nations. Although Norway is a big country, it's very, very little you know, fruitful soil, and the winters are very long and hard. So many Norwegians, of course, went to Iceland about 1,000 years ago, but also to Great Britain and Ireland, Scotland, Shetland, and even to America. So Leifur Eriksson was the one who actually discovered America long before Columbus. Yeah, so to dare to explore and dare to do something you're not necessarily in control of, I think would be Viking philosophy, because they sailed off in their ships and they thought that at the end that the world was flat, and at the end of the world there was a big snake who would eat them, but they still went. And that's a bit how it feels when we kind of let go of the reins and just ride forwards without the reins. It's like you don't really know how it goes. But usually if you have taken the time to connect with your horse and such, then it goes really, really well. And I am only partly Norwegian, by the way. So it's not like you need to be Viking or have Viking blood in your veins or something to ride like a Viking. It's a mental concept more than anything. So you can be black or white or yellow or from any part of the world and still ride like a Viking, as long as you dare to, you know, let go of the reins and let go of the lead rope and build a true connection with your horse. In 2015, I participated in the Mongol Derby, the world's longest horse race. It is 1,000 kilometers long on Mongolian semi-wild horses. It was transforming in a completely different way than what I expected it to be. And I went there as an educated riding instructor and horse trainer, and my plan was to train the Mongolian horses. But the fact is that they trained me. And I really became much more aware of my own need of controlling horses when I'm riding them. And I think in the modern day, riding has become almost the same as controlling the horse and making the horse do stuff. But the semi-wild horses of Mongolia, they wouldn't have no such thing. Since they are semi-wild, a rider trying to control them and make them do stuff and kind of own their feet when they're moving through the landscape will be experienced as a huge threat to the horse, because they want to be able to flee from predators, and they also want to be able to feed themselves in the Mongolian terrain, which looks like, you know, these endless grass plains that are quite easy to ride over. But the fact is there are very many rats there who make holes in the ground. So it's not uncommon in the Mongol Derby that the horse stumbles and the rider falls off. But instead of then blaming the horse and saying that, you know, these horses are crazy because the Mongolians were able to ride them fine, even the kids of Mongolia were able to ride these horses with no problems, I thought maybe it's something I'm doing that isn't quite right. And a great way to prevent the horse from stumbling is to give free reins so that the horse can feed themselves. And also a great way to not become thrown off their back is to go with the flow and not pull on the reins and try to control them. So going to Mongolia and riding the Mongolian semi-wild horses was a huge epiphany for me as a Western riding instructor and horse trainer. So after that, I changed completely the way I train horses. To connect with horses, you have to first go with the horse, and then the horse will go with you. You can't first tell the horse what to do and then expect a good cooperation to flourish from that point. So I've spent probably 5 years unlearning everything I learned in the riding school. Yes. So that's a process in itself. And maybe like Picasso said, like he had spent his whole youth and adult life trying to draw, you know, like a professional and an adult, and then he spent the rest of the time trying to draw like a child. So I think this boils a bit down to acknowledge the horses for who they are and their needs. They are prey animals and they are flight animals, but they are also herd animals. Horses represent freedom. To ride a horse is to borrow freedom. And you know, horses hate being constricted because they are flight animals, so they want a way out. And I want to set them free. And by setting the horses free, I also set the riders free of this always having to win the battle or always having to be in control. Because when the horse is self-controlling and wants to be where he or she is, we don't need cross ties to have them standing still in our presence and being brushed and saddled. I think to be a good rider, it takes the ability to make our ID the horse's ID. And if we can then understand the concept of using the reins for signaling to the horse and not for controlling the horse, we don't need to use the reins at all. And I ask for forward. And horses are extremely sensitive. So they can read our minds better than ourselves. So be in a neutral, positive state of mind when you're around horses. And yeah, build on that. They know. You can't hide it. So. Some horse owners might say that I'm just a rider, I'm not a horse trainer. But if you own a horse, you are also training your horse, if you like it or not. And the horses are always learning something, and they either learn something good or they learn something bad. And horses are always changes. So if it doesn't get better, it's probably getting worse. I think it's very, very common. If a rider doesn't succeed with the horse is blamed. Something wrong with the horse. And that's what I learned the most from, was to blame myself and figure out how can I do things differently. So that has been a path of endless wisdom versus a path of blaming the horse. Won't get you anywhere. It will probably get you a new horse, but with a different problem. So horses also learn from play. I had this mare, and she didn't want me on her back. So I had to kind of let go of the obedience-based training that I used to do and try something different. So I started playing football with her, as a kind of an icebreaker, because I could tell by her eyes that she really hated my guts and she was scared of kind of everything, even of me. So that kind of got our connection back, the football playing. So she couldn't do anything wrong with the football. And I gave her some treats when she was being brave and following the ball and stuff like that. And our relationship transformed. And she became much braver and more kind of friendly horse and not so scared of the world anymore after we started the football playing. So I think this is probably the biggest transformation I've had in a horse and in myself, from being a control freak and micromanaging her to the point where she just couldn't take it anymore and threw me off, to being able to just ride her with a neck rein. And I know that we are friends and she wants to have me on her back. It's as simple as that. And I'm very grateful for it. They are missing common sense. That's probably what city folks are missing out the most. I think it's becoming kind of true. I see so many examples of this every day that I think maybe especially in Norway, because the kind of mentality between people who live in the city and people who live in the country are quite on a kind of collision course. And they are kind of telling me that eating meat is bad for the environment because the sheep are farting. And I'm like, and that's the same people who go on vacation in an airplane every year. You know, if you live in a place where the avocados are growing on the trees around you, or the coconuts, or whatever, maybe you should eat what's available around you, and that would be the natural thing to do, versus eating stuff that's been flying across half the world and maybe even grown in a not very environmentally friendly way, such as the soya who is produced in the rainforest, for instance. You know, the sheep is a part of the nature, and it's the only way we can actually make food in this where we live. We can't grow potatoes, definitely not tomatoes and cucumbers or any vegetables of any kind. So the only way for us to utilize the nature and produce something is by having animals grazing in that nature. And they can make wool and meat from grass that's out in the outland, that you can't cultivate for anything else. Just because more people are living in the city and are thinking the same thing doesn't mean they are right. And it's becoming more and more apparent to me that living out in the country keeps us kind of grounded, and every day we see, you know, how things are functioning and how nature is in a totally different way than if we were living in the city and leisuring in the nature. Yeah, if we can live in tune with nature, then nature will keep on giving. But if we don't do it, then the ecosystem will collapse. I could definitely not imagining living a life without horses. Yeah, horses have not only enriched my life, I think they are the reason I am alive today. And the city life, and I think I didn't handle it very much. So maybe I got into bad company, or maybe I was the bad company, I don't know. But things started to really go downwards from there, and I quit high school, and then I was on rehab. And at the rehab station they had Icelandic horses, and I managed to get a job training horses in Iceland. So then I went to Iceland. Moving to Iceland and start to work there as a horse trainer really changed my life. And it really changed the path of the way I was living. and they have this amazing riding school. And I think that totally transformed me, because then I learned to learn, and I also learned to discipline myself. Because the school was all about horses. So suddenly I was able to learn other stuff as well, because everything was so interesting. And I really did my best there, and the horses gave me also the confidence in myself to think that, oh, I can also learn stuff. I can also do well in life. So that really changed the path of my life and everything. The horses, definitely. A horse gives you his or her life, kind of. That's dawning to me more and more. They give so much all the time, so they enrich my life every day. And also a good thing about horses is that if you have horses, you don't need like mindfulness courses and meditation and stuff like that, because horses, they bring you alive in the moment. They have that gift. If you own a horse, the horse gives its life to you. So that's really precious. Take care of your horse.